Welcome to the AI to ROI podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by Russell Fradin. He's the founder and CEO of Larridin, and we'll be covering 4 topics with Russell today. First, the AI visibility gap, the difference between AI deployments and AI adoption, and I'll add AI return on investment.
Sure, that's all that really matters.
Exactly. Number 2, measuring utilization versus proficiency versus impact, because they're 3 different things. Third is the CFO and CIO accountability dynamic for AI investments. And then lastly, what AI to ROI will actually mean in the next 12 to 24 months. So with that, Russ, can you please take a moment to give a brief overview of your journey to becoming my guest here on the AI to ROI podcast?
Sure. Great to meet you. Thanks for having me. So I moved to Silicon Valley 30 years ago and, joined a startup like before Netscape went public, a long time ago. And I've been out in the Bay Area for the last 30 years doing a collection of startups. A couple, early on in my career, I was a very, very early employee, first employee kind of thing at a couple of companies that became pretty successful. And then I founded a few companies that became large and were successful. And I started this company with a very, very long-time collaborator of mine. He and I have worked together for the last 26 years, and we founded a third co-founder who's been fantastic. And we started the company a little more than a year ago, raised $17 million from Andreessen Horowitz, from Gradient, which is the Google's AI fund, or it's been spun out, but at the time it was Google's AI fund, from Bloomberg, from Homebrew and Haystack, and a bunch of amazing angel investors. So far so good. And you and I obviously met when I was speaking at the SaaStr Summit within the last few weeks, all about AI measurement and what we're trying to build at Larridin.
Yeah, and since we're on the AI to ROI podcast, it's perfect. And you said a couple names that really resonated with me because my first job in the Valley was at a joint venture that GE did with Netscape, and then ultimately Netscape bought us, where I led the e-commerce group. And
Sure.
Mark Andreessen and I were out there talking about internet, and the extranet, which was my
He
group.
went on to build some good things. I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, he's done a couple of good things. But hey, let's get into it, because when I was at SaaStr, right, and let's call it what it was AIster. It was all about AI and agents. And I must admit, after going to 2.5 days, I probably listened to 12 different sessions. I got frustrated. And the reason I got frustrated, Russell, was I heard so many operators talking about getting their employees to experiment with AI tools, get them to get used to building AI agents. But when I asked a question, even to the CMO of Snowflake, about how are you measuring and managing the return on investment of these AI investments, there was very little about outcomes. So let me ask you, why aren't we even at least measuring the adoption and utilization rate of AI, which hopefully will be a precursor to true return on investment?
Well, look, companies are starting to, and that's hopefully in part thanks to us. But normally, you and I, our careers are vaguely the same length of time in technology, which is a long time. Normally, when new tech comes along, even when it grows quickly, it doesn't grow this quickly. So there is an element where, generally what happens is large companies take a long time to adopt new technology. And part of it is they have planning and they have budgeting and they have all of these things that happen. And AI just hasn't been like that. So because it hasn't been like that, people are scrambling to catch up. So it's not like, in Snowflake, to use your example, it's not like the CIO of Snowflake doesn't know that he or she has to understand spend and budgeting and tracking. And of course, everyone knows these things. The issue is, this is the first time we've had a, technology deployed that went viral, wildly useful globally for every knowledge worker in every industry all around the world, right? It used to be something starts in Silicon Valley, and then it takes a little while, it gets to New York, and then maybe, it gets to London, and then it gets to the continent, and then it gets to Japan, and that used to take years. now you have people using ChatGPT in India and in Korea and in America and in the UK and in Germany. And when you're in Berlin for work, it's no different than being in Boston these days in terms of AI adoption. It's really taken the world by storm. So if you have something that people know fundamentally, they just know in their bones it's going to matter, then of course all of the normal measurement and tracking that people are used to will be a bit trailing. By the way, I saw this, many years ago. I was I don't know, probably the first executive, among the first executives at a company called ComScore before we had any customers. I guess I wasn't the first. I was an early executive, and there were 5 or 6 years of internet advertising before anybody took a serious look at how do we really measure it. And what would happen is, it was direct response advertising, and you'd measure click-through rates, and then third-party measurement services like ComScore and Nielsen came along, and you started understanding brand efficacy, and you'd see brand advertising shift, and that all just took a while. But you have something very different happening so part of it is the measurement grew alongside the budgets. Partially thanks to the measurement. That just didn't happen with AI because everybody knew it was going to be valuable, so they just went all in and did it, which is great and is exciting. But then, of course, you look back and say, well, why aren't you measuring this? Well, frankly, because, if I can talk my own book, because we didn't exist.
Okay.
But of course not. None of this existed 3 years ago.
You're right. And, we had people saying, okay, we're going to have a token maxing environment, a variable cost. So let's start to the utilization. What are the primary challenges right now for CFOs, indoor CIOs to even have that visibility into AI tools being deployed and how they're being utilized? What's the fundamental challenges they're facing?
So in part, there were no tools to do it, right? So we've gone to company, we've started with this premise that said, look, someone's going to build third-party measurement for AI. Let's make sure it's us. And what would it take to do that? And so think about it this way, right? In the old days, frankly, actually, let's step back. There's never been great measurement around ROI for software inside companies. But the truth is, it didn't matter that much. Global software spend is 3 or 4% of the total amount spent on employees. At the end of the day, yes, my whole career has been selling software into big companies, but at the end of the day, the CFO didn't really care that much. The IT budgets aren't that large. I mean, yes, you have some things that are really expensive. Microsoft's a lot of money, Workday's a lot of money, but at the end of the day, what does it cost for a company to give you Excel? $100? Now we have this world where if you're a heavy Excel user, in my example here, your bill's $20,000 a year, right? We're starting to really get up there, right? We have engineers at my company where, their token bill is almost the amount we pay them in salary every month. So you're talking about real money. And so what I would say is, A, these tools have, overtaken the world very quickly, and B, they're really expensive. And so when you put those two things together, of course you have pressure on, let's measure what's happening. You see this every single day. I know this podcast doesn't come out today, but there's this story about, Amazon accidentally spent $500 million in tokens in a single month. There's a story that, Facebook spent $70 million in a weekend on Claude Code tokens. There's the Uber CTO story about spending their entire token budget by March, right? People have this, but partially these tools are expensive. They're really powerful. I mean, everyone uses them. You can see how wonderful they are. And there's no budgeting controls in place. So you put those three things together, and of course you're going to have a weird stew with a lot of these weird outlier stories. I don't look at that in a bad way. From my perspective, I look at it as a huge opportunity of great companies are going to want what we have to sell them, which is measurement and understand what's happening with AI in your organization, where are people spending money, understand and track your token spend and your token budgets and where is that getting spent. And it's very complicated because the endpoints are all of your employees, right? Like I said, in the old day, you bought Workday, you negotiated your contract, you owe Workday $2 million, and maybe you wanted to pay 1.8 and they wanted 2.2, but you agreed and you signed the deal and it costs what it costs. Now you have this world where, one engineer is a heavy user of tokens and your bill's $100,000. Another engineer uses it poorly, his bill's $30,000. And so you have this world where we're not used to having usage-based pricing where every employee is an endpoint. It's like no one's had that before. I mean, you have it with expenses to an extent, I guess, but how much can you really spend on an airplane ticket? And we have policies and procedures for that. Generally, most people in your company are not allowed to spend money on the company's behalf. And that's just not true in the AI world. And so no one's thought about how do you have tools and structures and processes in place for that.
Yeah, I just did some research in Fortune 1000 companies, and 71% of the time, the CIO is their primary owner of the AI technology budget.
Right.
Okay? Now, and then 17% of the time it was the CFO, and 14% of the time it was the departmental user. But that's only about utilization and governing of what the costs are going to be. But you came out with a post the other day that I really loved, because there's understanding what's being utilized and spent, but then there's the proficiency of that spend,
Sure.
and then the business impact. So tell me a little bit about your
Sure.
framing
So
of that and
our,
what you
our
do.
tool, if you think about our tools start with what's happening with AI in your organization. So people want to understand cost, token tracking, where are we spending money by group, by department, by, really what's actually happening? Where is this money getting spent? Why is it getting spent? Why is that bill so high? Why is that bill so low? What models are being used by who, where? So, cost is the base of all of this. Then you get to usage, which is you bought all this stuff. Is anyone using it? So you're paying for these tools, great, but is anyone using it? Above is anyone using it, then you get to what are they doing with it? Then you get to proficiency. Are they any good at it, right? We have customers where a very normal thing, you're a 50,000 person company, your boss went all in on AI. You said you really have to do AI. Great, wonderful. ChatGPT seems great, or I'll try to pick, for your example, you decided you're going to deploy ChatGPT Enterprise across your organization. Fantastic. Well, you deployed it across your organization to 30,000 people. You know what happens? 1,800 people are, token maxing supermen and superwomen. They've never been more productive in their whole life. Another 4,000, 5,000 people are using it a little bit for help on email and stuff like that. And I don't know, I'm lost track of my own numbers. 24,000 people barely log in, and when they do, it's to check, what time the Champions League final kicks off this weekend, right? So it's just like any other technology across an organization. Your employees most of your employees are not sitting around all day understanding the nuances of Claude Sonnet 4.8 versus 4.7, and they're not doing that. And so you still have to do all of the change management you have to do with any other software. What's the role of HR? What's the role of learning and development? How is training going to work? How do I enable my managers, who, let's be honest, tend to be my older employees who probably aren't as AI native as my younger employees? So how do I get my manager class up to speed on what should happen so that I can sit down and say, Ray, just do these 3 things. These 3 things will make you a more productive seller. So what I'd say now is we're in the experimentation phase, let 1,000 flowers bloom phase. And what have people learned? They've learned that for the heavy users, they're really productive. The tools are really expensive. We don't know how to manage it. We don't know what great looks like. And so now I need to take all of that and say, is this worth it? Yes, but only if people are trained and only if they're using it well. And so people use our tools to say, that's great. We've now figured out what works. Let's operationalize that. I talk about it as, the reason Lewis and Clark are famous is because they didn't just make their way to the Pacific. They brought back a map, right? You can't count on everyone in your organization being an explorer. That's why the explorers are famous, right? But the way you operationalize this is you figure out what's great in your company. And then if you think about that kind of fat part of the distribution of your company, the goal isn't to make all of your employees explorers. The goal is to figure out what works from all the experimentation and then just tell people what to do. That's how you move the 60% of your kind of fat part of the curve over to becoming more productive. Is you say, hey, Ray, this is what really works for sellers to be more productive with AI. Just do these 3 things and you'll be more productive.
Yeah, let me go to the beginning. So we got the CIOs and CFOs listening to this, and they're just getting ready to review their Q2 financials, and they spent $3.2 million more in AI tokens than they budgeted. How does Larridin, how do they engage and enter the engagement, and what do you do for them up front?
So first, now that you're working with us, you're going to have real-time reporting on spend and budget. You're not going to get surprised that you spent $3 million more, because you're going to have it. You're going to have reporting. You're going to have projections. You're going to see where you spent it. By the way, we had a customer the other day where it turned out they spent man, I can't, some real amount of money on an agent that was still running on behalf of an employee who didn't work there anymore. And again, I'm not saying anything was wrong. It's just, normally you leave the company, I still owe Microsoft $100 for your Excel license, who cares? But when it's $20,000 because your agent is still running, that is a real problem for companies, right? So that's number one. It's I just need visibility into what's happening. And I need to understand what is happening in my org. Who's using what are they doing with it, at what level of proficiency, where's it driving productivity, how much does it cost, right? You have to be able to answer those 5 questions for yourself. And so we provide visibility into all of that. Then you can start doing more. Then we can talk about, we have more advanced things on how do we get people more proficient? What does great look like? Let's drill in onto our FP&A processes. What else should we automate with AI? When our engineers are spending all of this money, are they producing better quality code thanks to our AI tools? Or are we just spending more money producing a lot of, AI slop code, or to use the popular phrase of the day. And so, what are people getting from us on day one? Just visibility to what's actually happening on the spend side, on the usage side, on the proficiency side, and on the kind of really understanding the contours of how people are using AI in the org.
Okay, so you're ingesting all the telemetry data, the invoicing data, et cetera, and providing those insights,
Yeah,
right?
but also at the user level, right? So it's really about understanding what, on the seller by seller level, with all the privacy stuff, we don't care about what Ray is doing, right? This isn't about Ray sending email or something like that. It's understanding, what do my most productive sellers look like? I'll give you an example. I tweeted some data about a month and a half ago. We get asked frequently about Glean, and is Glean valuable, right? Should we renew Glean? And so we looked across all of our customers, and what we found is that we looked at the heavy users of Glean inside our customers versus the light users of Glean versus the non-users of Glean. So no one else can do this, right? Glean can't give you this data. Companies can't get this data on their own. So what do the heavy users look like? And what is their workflow everywhere else in the org? What do the light users look like, and what's their workflow everywhere else in the org? And what do the non-users look like in the same department? So sellers that are, and what we found is the sellers that are heavy users of Glean, I don't know the founder of Glean, I don't really care one way or another, but what we found is the heavy users of Glean among the sales org were much more productive than the light users. What it said to me is, if I were a company spending money on Glean, I would go all in on training. I would make sure that I could move people up that curve, because it's very clear from our data that you are much more proficient, you're making much more sales calls, get much more work done on your own if you're a heavy user of Glean in a sales org. But you need that visibility to understand. Like I said, we bought all these tools. We have customers with 400 or 500 different AI tools in use across their org.
Yeah, tell me this. How do you cross that bridge from utilization, proficiency to business impact? Are you somehow configuring and adjusting that?
Yeah, no one's ever going to measure business impact personally. So I'm sorry. No one's ever going to measure business impact perfectly. Right. We have different approaches for different departments. On the engineering side, we're integrated with GitHub, with Cloud Code, with Cursor, with Datadog. So we're looking at we basically created our own kind of complexity adjusted AI code quality index.
Oh, okay.
So to look at, you spent this money, was it worth it? Did you spend it well? This guy over here that's spending $10,000 a month, that woman over here that's spending $3,000 a month, which one of them is right? Right? Because I'm the CTO, I need to either figure out how to get her to triple her spend, or I need to figure out how to get him, say, hey, I'm glad you've gone all in AI, you're not using this stuff efficiently.
Because it needs to go beyond PRs.
Right. And so to do that, though, I have to understand usage, I have to understand costs, I have to see code output quality, I have to see if it's rolled back or it stays in production. And so we built a tool to analyze all of that.
Oh, okay.
Now, on the sales side, it's different, right? In that case, you're doing some amount of surveys to find out output, some amount of integration with Salesforce and HubSpot. And so it's all about understanding what are the employees doing with AI, what are their workflows, and then, we have various ways of measuring their output. Again, none of it is perfect, let's be honest. Like if you lay in bed tonight and you think to yourself, Ray, was I productive today? All joking aside, it's unknowable. Like, let's be honest, right? Productivity is by definition something A, you have to measure, and B, it is unknowable in any absolute sense. Your goal as a company is to understand, when I do these things, does it drive more productivity for my employees? And does it drive enough more productivity that it is worth the investment? In a world where no one will ever know for sure, of course.
So in that world where you can't measure it perfectly, you still have CFOs that are saying,
Yes, and so
I'm
for us,
spending,
we're looking at usage, we're looking at proficiency, we're looking at reported productivity, we're looking at code quality, we're looking at integrations with sales, and so we're doing more than anyone else is able to do.
and
But
who
at
do
the
you,
end of the day, if I'm a CFO, one way to look at this, I was talking to a CFO of a very large, couple $100 billion public company, who's one of our customers, and he said, look, at the end of the day, it's really all going to come down to budget. He said, at the end of the day, I have to trust my colleagues. And so that $5 million doesn't grow on trees. Are you going to be more productive? Are you going to hire fewer people? Are you going to hire fewer contractors? Or do you not need the tool? Right? Like, we're not just going to have a world where all of corporate America has lower gross margins going forward because AI tools are fun. You're either going to sell more, you're going to get a lot more done, so you need fewer people in that role. Maybe you repurpose them to other things, or you're not going to need the tools.
yeah, well, I have this hypothesis that one of the ways we're going to measure the impact of AI and the increased productivity is revenue per employee
Of
or
course.
operating or OPEX as a percent of revenue.
Of course.
Is that something that you'll be also ingesting over
Well,
time to
look,
look at those?
all we are today is an important input to that. I don't want to. I don't want to overstate what we do, right? We are a key piece of measuring the ROI of these tools, right? There is no way you will have a good picture of the value of AI to your org without us. But that does not mean we are all you need, right? We don't have full visibility into all of your costs that you're spending everywhere in the org. We don't have full visibility into your support costs to do this or your training costs. Of course, right? We're measuring what we're measuring, right? You as a company still need to understand your overall investment in AI. And what I would say is we are a very unique, necessary aspect of measuring what you need to understand as a large company, all around the world. But we're not by any means, hey, you're a CFO, you're not doing any work, you hire Larridin, boom, you're good. Like, no, you also have all of your normal budgeting work, of course.
Yeah. So people today are purchasing your software to understand and manage cost and utilization. You said that's the primary value for phase one?
It depends. I wouldn't say that is our primary use case. A lot of time customers use us when they're early in their AI journey. I talked a little bit about workflow intelligence earlier. I kind of brushed over this of like, what else should you be automating with AI? Very often people say to us, hey, we're early on our AI journey. So I'm actually not worried about cost tracking yet. I don't need reporting on what tools people are using because frankly, not much. Most companies are doing very little with AI. So some subset of our customers actually, the way they engage with us is, hey, we know we need to start adopting AI. Instead of just running a bunch of experiments, just tell us the workflows we should be automating with AI. Let's measure where our employees are wasting their time today and tell us what to automate. So what I'd say is we have great solutions for people early in their AI journey. I was on the phone the other day with a multi-billion-dollar company in the financial services space. Today they're doing nothing with AI. They haven't rolled out ChatGPT to their employees. They're not using AI for coding, which is not unusual. And what he said to me was, hey, look, just help me understand where I should start. What should I do first? So we have, for those people, they're not starting with token measuring and proficiency, right? They haven't done anything yet. For customers that have, then I have customers that are spending $800 million, $1 billion this year in AI tools. Yeah, they want to understand budgeting and tracking and performance and how do we get more out of this, right? We've decided to make the investment great. So where should we triple down? How are we doing, right? So we have customers that are saying, great, we're all in on AI, but I still need to understand, I got 5,000 employees. How proficient is the average employee? And I want to move that up, right? I have 5,000 employees. I know when the people are heavy users, they're very productive. How do I make more people heavy users? And let's measure how I'm doing against that goal.
Yeah. To me, it almost feels like we're going back to enterprise software days where in SaaS, a lot of times the functional department head would own the budget for their software. Do you see it being more centralized in this agentic AI world? And notice I said agentic AI, where it goes across organizations, a process that's truly interfunctional?
I think we're too early to define what these budgets even mean. For instance, when you said earlier, let's think about this for a second. To my point on all of your employees being endpoints for spend. Okay, you have a budget for AI. Great. What are you going to do when you go past the budget? Budgets normally imply the ability to stop. Right? What you're seeing again and again, and why there's so much angst today, is we're just trying to understand, give you measurement, give you control, give you visibility into what's happening. But when you saw the Uber CTO, for instance, the other day say they blew through their entire AI budget in March, you know what he didn't say? He didn't say we're turning it off. We're telling our engineers they're not allowed to use Claude Code anymore, or Cursor, or whatever they're using, Codex. I don't know what they're using at Uber. He didn't say that. He just said we've blown past it. And so you wind up in this weird world. This is my point earlier. How do budgets really work? Well, your head of marketing has a budget that she controls for media spend. She knows she has $10 million to spend on a Super Bowl ad this year. So she spends $10 million. We now have this world where, okay, you've given your head of marketing a $10 million budget, and she's propagated that down to her team. But as every single person on the team takes an activity and their agents do more and more and more and more work, and they lack the controls to understand what's happening and visibility, well, you're going to wind up spending $50 million. And it's not clear who to blame there, because no one has the controls and visibility in that world. And so we're just trying to provide, a light in the darkness of what is actually happening. Where are you actually spending money at the agent level, at the tool level, so that you have the management tools to even begin to understand your spending here. So I think we're going to have to, obviously we're going to have a world where there will be budgets and there will be controls, of course, but I think it's much more complicated than who owns the budget. Yeah. As if I'm going to go negotiate with Nancy to see if I can have an extra grand. The problem here is I've given all of these tools to all of my employees, and I've given them the ability, with no ability for them to understand what they're doing and no controls, to spend the company credit card.
Yeah, it's funny. I just did
if you give all, I don't know if you have children, right? I have kids. If I give all of my kids credit cards and unlimited access to DoorDash and unlimited access to Uber, who owns the budget? They all do, frankly.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting? This aligns with, I just did some research with 300 CIOs from Fortune 5,000 companies, and they said the number one they wanted from their AI vendor was early visibility into usage and cost trends, and notify them before they hit their threshold.
That's what we're trying to build. But again, when you say, I'm sure you've looked at how complicated this is. Well, I have agents, and I'm using some of it directly through Claude Code, but some of it is going through Bedrock, but some of it is going through Open Router, but some of it is going through Codex, but some of it is going through these tools my marketing team bought that I didn't know about. Sometimes people are using their personal accounts, and sometimes they're using their corporate accounts, and they're using their personal accounts, and they're expensing it later. I just want to have visibility to what's happening. And by the way, the AI vendor doesn't know. If you don't figure out as a company how to cover all of your endpoints and understand all of that tracking, no one else is going to do it for you. And it's not because Anthropic doesn't want to, it's because you're spending money with Anthropic 5 different ways.
Right.
You're going directly to Anthropic, you're doing it through Cursor, you're doing it through Bedrock. They don't know how to give you unified reporting.
I knew these 30 minutes were going to go way too fast. One final question, and then I'm going to do a quick rapid fire. And that is, what advice do you give to the CFOs and CIOs out there right now who are saying, I just need to get better visibility into my AI spend? What advice?
Obviously, I'm talking my own book, but if you want to find a competitor, Larridin, go see if you can find somebody that's better than us. You obviously have to measure this. The way I say to people all the time when I'm talking about Larridin is you've decided to go on a fitness journey. Maybe you're going to start rock climbing. Maybe you're going to run. Maybe you're going to take Ozempic. Maybe you're going to eat healthy. Maybe you're going to become a vegetarian. Maybe you're going to become a carnivore. Whatever you're going to do, you should buy a scale. Right? We're just trying to say, you should know what's happening in your enterprise, and we give you visibility into what's happening in your enterprise. Then what you do with that data, we're happy to be your partner along the way, but there's a lot of people that will be your partner. Your problem today is you don't even really know what's happening.
Yeah, got it. Okay, here's my 3 rapid fire questions. They're not just for you, because of what your company does. I ask every guest these 3 questions.
Go for it.
What are the variables that are key to ensuring companies can get an ROI from their AI investments? I know we're not there yet, but...
No, I'll tell you exactly what it is. I think companies have done a great job pushing their employees to experiment. They've done a poor job measuring the experiments, learning from the experiments, and feeding that back into the organization. So if you think about the hard work, it's fun to do experiments, it's a lot of sugar high. It's the hard work of change management where I have seen companies not doing as well as they should, which is, like I said, you've got these 2,000 people, they're amazing. Great, but the way I succeed is getting 30,000 people to row together. How do I take this back into my HR, to my learning and development, to my, kind of enablement at the manager level, at the mid-manager level, so I can push the behaviors I need to 30,000 people, not to 2,000.
Okay, second question. Who owns the actual benefits and ROI being generated from their AI spend? Is it central? Is it decentralized?
It's
Is it
going
everyone?
to depend on the company. I mean, I think, look, you and I have touched on this. I think over time, this is all going to be CFO. These numbers are so expensive that this isn't going to be something that's not done in partnership with the CFO. Of course, all the departments are going to care, of course, but at the end of the day, these numbers are way too big for the CFO to not care.
Which is the first time the CFO is going to be that focused on technology spend. Because to your point, it's usually 1.5% of revenue.
Pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Normally it's been pretty cheap. Yeah. So it's the CIO cares and the department heads care, right? The VP of marketing, the CIO care. That's amazing. But at the end of the day, did the CFO care that much if I used, HubSpot or Salesforce? Not really. The CIO cared, the head of sales cared, the head of marketing cared, the CFO didn't care that much. When you're talking about this level of expense, this is going to be the number one, number two driver of OpEx for almost every company.
Jensen Wang says that for every $500,000 developer, we need $250,000 of token spend. So that's real money.
Yeah, okay. By the way, that's exactly the point. This has now gone beyond just the CTO will figure it out.
Yeah. Okay, last question. A lot of early career people actually listening to this podcast because they're trying to figure out how AI is going to impact their career. What advice do you give to that early career person right now about AI and how they should view it?
I actually have the same advice I've given young people my entire career. I think it applies well here. Number one, work ridiculously hard. One of the best things you have when you're a young person is the ability to work ridiculously hard at a level that most people, as they get older, get a little lazier, and that's fine. So work ridiculously hard. Number two, total complete mastery of the new tools. Part of working ridiculously hard is you have the ability to understand these tools at a level that, frankly, not as you move up the decades, a smaller percent of people in their 40s will be AI native, a smaller percent of people in their 60s. It's not like your brain can't process it. You and I do this just fine, but we should be in a world where 100% of people in their 20s are deeply engaged with these tools and understand how they work. Number two. And number three, relationships really do matter for your whole career. All of the other things are still true, right? Yes, I'm running an AI company, but I raised money from people I've had relationships with for 10 or 15 years. Like, that stuff matters. I'm selling to customers I've known for many decades in some cases. Sometimes they're new people, but sometimes they're people I've known for decades. Like, relationships are still going to matter. Of course, people are still going to matter in the workforce. And so I think it's kind of generic advice I would have given you 15 years ago as a 22-year-old.
Yeah, relationships is currency that will pay for those tokens. I love it. Russell Fradin, the co-founder and CEO of Larridin, thank you for being my guest.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
And to our audience, if you're enjoying the amazing guests we have like Russell Fradin and the insights they're providing, it means the world to us. So go ahead and subscribe to the AI to ROI podcast on your favorite podcasting app and give us that 5-star rating. Makes me feel good. And I love still doing these things. And if you think you have someone that you'd like to see interview, send me a direct message on LinkedIn at Ray Reich. Thank you, Russ, and thank you to the audience.
Thank you.